Yeah. Yeah, no, they're migrating out. All right, we're ready to get started, everyone. Welcome. And if you, Charlie's got the handouts in back if you don't have one yet for tonight, calorie density, weight management. We have an announcement from Pam here before we get started.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to put a plug in for Jamie's Gregor challenge, the challenge for the Gregor app. I started doing it. I didn't really want to because I don't like tracking things, but we have this wonderful little texting group where we're supporting each other and sending out recipes and things like that. So if you're at all interested in joining the Gregor challenge, I highly recommend it. It's very fun, even though I don't like tracking things. So the app makes it fun. Okay, that's all.
So some of you don't get enough with one class a week. And I don't want to detract in any way from these Tuesday night sessions because you're going to get food here. But I just wanted to plant a little seed in your brain in case you have friends or family who you're kind of like, well, we're in the middle of the classes and maybe we'd like to start afresh. So if you know of any people who are interested in afternoon classes, we're starting afresh August 19th at Natural Grocers. It'll be Talk with a Doc, where it'll just be a question and answer session. That's going to go on for a couple weeks. And then 1st of September, it's going to be introductory sessions. And then the day after, like Thursday the 20th, there are classes that start on Riverbend Annex, which is not at the hospital, but it's north of it by Gateway. Those are from in the afternoon again, 3 to 4:30. It's on the website. And again, there's no need not to come to these classes every Tuesday night, but some people might like to come to 2 classes a week for the support. So just a thought. And with that said, I'm excited to go on a little vacation with my grandkids. They're 22 years of age, and Friday we're going to be driving up with them. Why they want to drive up with their old grandparents, I don't know, to the San Juan Islands, Orcas Island, and they wanted to see an octopus. So we're really excited about that. So just wanted to share that with you.
All right. Well, is there anyone new, brand new here? I think everyone's been here at least once before, right? Okay, great. All right. Well, go ahead and go to the PowerPoint here. So this is a two-part talk. So tonight I'm going to do the weight management and calorie density portion, and then the week 12. This is week 7, I believe, and then week 12 I'll do the food addiction behavior change portion of this talk. So kind of a two-parter. Tonight's just all about weight, how to be at a healthy weight management, learning all about calorie density. And did anyone come to this talk last cycle, or is it a couple people? So it's new to most of you then. That's great, excellent. All right, next slide. All right, I always like to have a quote. So if you guys remember Red Skelton, he always said things that were like obvious but kind of funny. So if we don't change the direction in which we are going, we will end up where we are headed. So next slide. And C.S. Lewis, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Next. All right, it's probably a little bit hard to read this, but there's kind of two philosophies. We have a diet mentality and a health mentality. So the diet mentality thinks of food as the enemy, my bad habits, things I'm doing temporarily, things I don't like about myself, the weight scale, and a finish line. So we all can relate to those things. We've all been on diets before. But the health mentality, what we're hoping to you come away with all these classes is food is fuel, and my good habits, so focusing on the positive things I'm doing forever, things that I want for myself, the daily choices, and the lifelong journey. So hopefully you can kind of memorize that and kind of focus on that health mentality. So that's really important. Next slide. So, talking about weight management, there's a lot of different things. First, we're going to talk about how our appetite works, and then knowing that behavior change and food addiction play a big role, which that'll be part 2, week 12. We'll talk about that, but that has a big play on our weight as well. And then our emotions, both mental and physical, actually contribute to our weight as well, because it's not just about physiology and our appetite, but it's also those emotional things, mental and physical, play a role. And then there's the how not to diet, Dr. Greger. So we always talk about in these classes about the Daily Dozen, but there's also on the Daily Dozen app, the free app, there's also a how not to diet portion. It's the 21 tweaks, it's called. And so if you actually look on the Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, you'll see the 21 tweaks there. If you click on that, that's essentially the cliff notes of the book he wrote called How Not to Diet. Because all of his books, How Not to Die, How Not to Diet, How Not to Age. The next one coming out is How Not to Hurt. And so that's another one that's coming out. So so kind of refer to that, because when you go to the 21 tweaks on his app, calorie density, which I'm going to focus mostly on tonight, that's only one of the 21 tweaks, is just focusing on calorie density. You're going to understand calorie density up and down when we're done here. And I wrote that there, 21 tweaks included on the Daily Dozen app. Next slide. So what we're going to talk about first is calorie density. What is it? And then we're going to go over this chart in detail. And then after that, I have a couple of videos from one of my favorite dietitians, Jeff Novick, his name is. And he's a pretty funny guy. And I'm going to be showing a couple of excerpts from that lecture. It's actually a full hour, 19-minute lecture that I have posted on the website. So if you go to on the livelifestylemedicine.com website, under the videos section, you scroll down and you'll see the full calorie density lecture by Jeff Novick. So I'll show you a couple little segments of it tonight, but I definitely recommend everyone watch that full lecture. I probably watched it 8 or 9 times before I didn't pick up something new. There's just so much detail in it. And I always tell all my patients that are trying to achieve a healthy weight, I tell them, hey, until you've reached your goal weight, watch this lecture, this full hour, 19-minute lecture by Jeff Novick every 3 months until you reach your goal weight. And then if you start to kind of plateau, or you start to kind of slide back again, you start gaining weight again, watch it again, because you'll always, oh yeah, it's like there's something you always miss, because there's so much detail in it. And I bet I've watched it 20 times at this point, just over the years. So everyone have one of these handouts? If not, Charlie has them in the back. I think everyone's got one. And it's also in the Zoom chat. Thank you, Ed. And so people online can see it as well. And so everyone can hear me fine? I'm talking loud enough? Okay, great. Excellent. Because I think you guys all know this at this point, but just in case, the microphone's for the people online. And we record these classes too, and they get posted to the website. So that's what the microphone's for. So calorie density. So calorie density is the amount of calories in a given weight of food. And so when we study calorie density in science, it's calories per gram, because it's a little bit more precise, more accurate, and pretty much the whole world is metric except for us, right? And so calories per gram. And you might know, it's like 354, I think is 354 calories or grams in a pound and things like that. But we don't understand metric very well, right? I mean, in medicine, Charlie and I are forced to learn metric somewhat, because everything in medicine's in metric system. But yeah, people understand grams as well. So you're probably thinking, what's 100 grams? What's that look like? If you were to look at a pile of food, how much is 100 grams? But if you pounds, right? So in calorie density on this chart, and everything we're going to talk about tonight is calories per pound. Even though you might say some of the foods on here, I don't ever eat a pound of this or that, so what's it matter? And so, but when it comes to scientific studies on calorie density, there's actually been over 100 of studies on calorie density. Most of the work was done at Penn State University. Barbara Rolls is a PhD dietitian nutritionist, and she did a lot of the studies over the years. And there's actually a book called, I've drawn a blank on it now, Volumetrics. She wrote a book called Volumetrics. It's all about calorie density. And so when we talk about calorie density, it doesn't matter whether you're plant-based or carnivore diet or any kind of diet, it doesn't matter. Calorie density applies to every food that we could possibly eat. And so calories per pound is what we're going to be talking about tonight, even though calories per gram is more precise. And when they do the studies, that's what they use. And so calories per pound of food. And so if you go into the store and you line up every food that's available for purchase in a grocery store, you'll find there's more than a 40-fold difference between the foods that are the lowest in calorie density and the foods that are the highest in calorie density. And we're going to go over all of those here, these categories. And so you don't have to memorize this chart. You don't have to memorize what the calorie density is of specific foods, but you might get a appreciation for what food categories about how many calories per pound different categories of food have. And when we go over some of the slides, you'll see, kind of what the target calorie density is and how easy or difficult it is to hit those calorie density targets depending on your activity level to lose weight or be at the weight you would like to be. And so the first time I looked at this chart, I kind of alluded to it earlier, I went, okay, so butter has 3,200 calories in a pound of butter. It's like, well, who cares? I've never sat and ate a pound of butter, right? So who cares, right? It's like, so that's a fair question. But what I really appreciated after I studied this is that, oh, well, if you're trying to figure out like counting calories and trying to figure out how many calories you're eating when you have a amount of food on your plate, whether you're tracking with an app or anything like that, is that you would have to know the exact serving size, the exact number of calories in that food and in that serving, how many servings, and it's really inexact. And even really seasoned dietitians have a difficult time estimating calorie intake for people with meal plans and things. So it's not very exact. Whereas calorie density, when you understand it's really freeing. It's really amazing because it doesn't matter how much of a particular food you eat, the calorie density never changes. It's like a math constant. So if you think about, you do math equations, it's a constant. So whether you eat, a handful or a pound or half a pound or whatever, the calorie density is always the same. So it doesn't matter how much of it you eat. It's the same calorie density. And so you'll see how powerful it is. And so before we get into this chart, I wanted you to be able to look at it. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how our appetite works first, just to kind of get an appreciation for it. So physiology, kind of bore you with a little bit of science here on our physiology. So, we eat food and that goes into our stomach and our stomach will expand, right? And whether it's water or kale or potatoes or whatever, candy, whatever you're eating, it's going to take up a certain amount of space and it's going to expand our stomach, right? And it happens to be we have these little baroreceptors, little pressure receptors on the outside of our stomach. And as the stomach fills up, it actually stretches those little receptors, sends a signal to our brain telling us we're full. So the signals are things like leptin, ghrelin, CCK. There's these different kinds of hormones that actually say, hey, you've had enough to eat. The stomach's filled up. You're full. And we all kind of like that, right? We like that feeling of kind of feeling full. And so if you think about, okay, that's one of our mechanisms to feel full. But if you think about it for a second, well, would that really be enough? Because what if we just drank, a gallon of water? That would stretch out our stomach and tell our brain that we're full. And so it's a good thing we have another system, a backup system, essentially, that's kind of running in the background. And it's called, there's different names for it. There's density receptor, nutrient receptor, richness receptor. And so it's going to actually detect how rich or how calorie dense the food is that you're actually eating. And so I always like to do a little experiment to kind of demonstrate this. So everybody hold up both of their fists and pretend like in your left fist is kale and in your right fist is cheesecake. Okay, so if you eat each of those, which one's gonna, you can put your hands down, which one's gonna make you feel full more? Because they're the same size, right? Same fist size. Which one's gonna make you feel full? The kale or the cheesecake?
It works, but it's
Cheesecake,
just,
right?
Oh.
Because we've all done that. We've all eat cheesecake, and you're just like, oh, that's rich, right? I'm full, right? And whereas if you did that with the kale, you'd be like, okay, what's to eat next, right? or 30 minutes later you're going to be hungry, because you're going to learn there's a huge difference in the calorie density between those two foods. And so they took up the same space, so they activated those baroreceptors the same, but the richness density receptor, your brain knew, hey, this is a big load of calories.
Is it a 2032?
Full after eating that. And so those are our two mechanisms that we have to trigger our satiety, satiations, to be satisfied, right? Satiety. So that's how our stomach works with that. And now, so I talked about the 40-fold difference. So vegetables, so everything on here is calories per pound. So vegetables on average are about 100 calories per pound. And so if you see those pound bags of greens, like I get at the farmer's market, it's a big old bag of a pound of greens. That's actually, some of the greens are actually only about 70 calories a pound. So even less than 100 calories a pound. These are kind of averages. And so there's only 70 calories in that pound of greens. Whereas if you go all the way to the right-hand side of the chart, oil is 4,000 calories per pound. And again, you might not ever eat a pound of oil, but we've all eaten a tablespoon of oil, right? So a tablespoon of oil is about 125 calories in just a tablespoon. So if you put a tablespoon of olive oil on your salad, there's more calories in that tablespoon of olive oil than in a whole pound of vegetables, right? So you can kind of see that difference in calorie density. And so I just wanted you to appreciate, do you guys see how it's a 40-fold difference? 100 calories a pound versus 4,000 calories per pound, right? And so everything that we buy at the grocery store is somewhere on that spectrum. And and it's even more than 40-fold, because as I just mentioned, some greens are even like kale's like 70 calories per pound of greens. So you can understand why a cow eating grass in a pasture has to do it all day long, right? Because the grass is only like 70 or 80 calories a pound. And if you're a 600 or 1,000 pound bull or something, you're going to have to eat a lot of volume to get enough calories. You see that? And so that's any questions so far before I start going into the specific chart, into the specific levels? Is this making sense what calorie density is? And you see how important it is? And so I'm going to go over some of these categories, then I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'll show you the video of Jeff Novick. And what he'll do is he'll be showing you basically the same calories in two different foods. And like, the one on the right is 200 calories, the one on the left is 200 calories or 800 calories or whatever it is. And you'll see the difference in the foods based on the calorie density, how much different it's going to be on whether you feel full or not, right? And how full you get your stomach, and then as long as there's enough calories. Because sometimes you'll hear people, and I think we might have mentioned this in the nutritional myths class. One of the questions was on the myths is, I was eating, the rabbit food, just eating salads and non-starchy vegetables, just tons and tons and tons, and I was always hungry, and I was always having to reach for meat and dairy, cheese and processed foods because I'm starving, right? It's like you can see if you're too low on calorie density, you're not going to feel full and satisfied, because you just can't get enough calories eating foods too far to the left all of the time, because you just only have so many stomachfuls, and it's not activating those richness receptors like we talked about if you're just eating kale as opposed to cheesecake, right? And so if you get, there's a sweet spot for calorie density, and you'll see some of those sweet spots on one of the slides later. Did you have a question? Yeah, so good segue. So let's talk about the colors on here. So I know it's kind of the way it came through. It's supposed to be green, yellow, and red is what it's supposed to be, but I know it kind of looks orangey or whatever. And if you look down below here, I actually got this from Jeff Novick. So he used to work for the McDougall program, and back in the day, I actually, when I was still living up in Portland, Dr. McDougall's son, Craig McDougall, who's a physician, he was working at Kaiser Permanente at the time in Beaverton, and I actually looked him up, and I was working out that way, and I went to lunch with him, and I spent a day with him in the clinic. Craig McDougall, John McDougall's son, and so Craig McDougall gave me this because Craig McDougall used to go to his dad, John McDougall's, advanced study weekends and all the live-in. He used to do like a 7-day or 5 to 7 day in like at like a resort, and people would teach him how to cook, and they do all these kind of lectures. It was a live-in program, And a lot of you know who John McDougall, was. He's since passed, but so that's how I got this. Actually, was through Craig McDougall, and Jeff Novick often lectured at John McDougall's programs. So that's how I got this. But so yeah, so we have green, yellow, and red. And so green is kind of like that, like my traffic light handout in the back. Green light means eat as much as you want. Yellow light means kind of more in moderation. And we'll some of the reasons why some of these foods are green, yellow, and red, as in addition to the actual calorie density. So the question was, why is tofu yellow? And it's because it's really high in fat. So even though tofu is only about 500 calories a pound, it is pretty high in fat. So that would be kind of like you don't want to eat unlimited amounts of that. Whereas you could eat unlimited amounts of fruit and greens and beans and so some of those other non-starchy vegetables. And same with avocado. That's why it's 700 calories in a pound of avocado. And so when we hit the breakouts on the sweet spot for calorie density, some of that will make more sense. So we'll get to that. Yeah, so that's another great question. So sugar is in yellow because if you're only eating tiny amounts of it, like to sweeten your oatmeal or your coffee, it's not there's no nutrient value to it. It's not like it's good for you. But if you're just sprinkling a little bit of kind of like salt, if you're just putting a pinch of salt or a tiny bit of sugar to make the medicine go down, the kind of thing, like Mary Poppins, then you're not really consuming it as a food. It's just a flavoring or a small amount, but it is still 1,700 calories a pound. So that's really high, right? And here's a great example. So if sugar is 1,700 calories a pound, I don't actually have the exact calorie density of sugar cane, but my guess is sugar cane is probably pretty close to maybe 500 calories a pound, down around where the whole grains are. But because you stripped out the sugar and refined it into a white crystalline powder, it went from 500 calories a pound all the way up to 1,700 calories a pound. And so let's look at fruit. Fruit's only 300 calories a pound, but let's kind of go all the way over to the yellow, and you see dried fruit. Dried fruit is 1,200 calories a pound. So does anyone have any idea why fruit is only 300 calories a pound, but dried fruit is 1,200 calories a pound? More concentrated, because what's missing? Water, right, exactly. The water's taken out. So that doesn't make dried fruit any less healthy. It just means, wow, if you're trying to lose weight, you don't want to just eat unlimited amounts of dried fruit because you can sit and watch a TV show and eat 5 apples of dried apples pretty easily, right? But could you sit and eat 5 apples? We'd all be like, like it's like not another bite, right? And that's that difference in calorie density right there. So there's just as much fiber in the dried apples. There's just and the same nutrients, everything, but the water's been removed. And when you watch Jeff Novick, he'll talk about removing the fiber and the water. Yeah, question over here. Yeah, that's another really good one. So pasta's in the green. It's 600 calories a pound, so it's a little high. But if you does anyone have an idea? So like bread, for example, bread is 1,200 calories a pound. So why is pasta only 600 calories a pound? People think of those as equals, right? What's the difference between bread and pasta? What's missing from water again, right? Water's missing. And so because pasta absorbs water, it lowers the calorie density. And so it's kind of in that sweet spot, 600. You're going to learn, I'll give it away now, 5 to 600 calories a pound is kind of what the sweet spot is. And again, I'll show that in a little bit. And so that's why it's in there. But, it's a little higher. I mean, it's higher than fruit, it's higher than vegetables, slightly higher than potatoes as your tubers, potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams. Those are all about 400 calories a pound. Whole grains, so like intact whole grains like wheat berries and brown rice and quinoa and amaranth and farro and sorghum and barley, those are all about 500 calories per pound. And so you're going to boil those up. That's cooked and ready to eat, right? And so 500 calories a pound. Beans and legumes, so beans, peas, chickpeas, split peas, lentils, about 600 calories a pound. Then we already covered pasta, we already covered avocado. And then now let's look, now we're into some of the reds. And you might be thinking, well, why is poultry, eggs, and fish, why are they red? Because they're only 700 calories a pound, whereas avocados are also 700 calories a pound. Well, that's where the other health benefits and other special things like Charlie said last time. What's so special animal protein? Well, I'll tell you. And so those also come because those are foods. We don't eat nutrients in isolation. We don't eat carbs, fat, and food, right? And so those poultry, eggs, and fish and beef, they come with saturated fat. They come with no fiber. They come with cholesterol. They come with all the pollutants, and so they're red because of the negative health effects. But if you think about this, if you look on the chart and you go all the way to maybe where we cut off at dried fruit, everything to the left of dried fruit, if you went back in a time machine 100, 150 years, what people ate. We really didn't eat a lot of the other things to the right. We didn't have a lot of processed foods before World War II. We started processing foods, convenience, K rations, things like that. We didn't have a lot. There's some sugar, there was some cheese. People did bake cookies and things like that, but it was very small amounts and it was from scratch, things like that. We didn't go to the store and buy Chips Ahoy on the shelf, 150 years ago, did we? And so that, and you look, and actually at the very beginning of Jeff Novick's lecture, if you watch the full version, he shows a picture of a movie theater in the 1950s, and like nobody's overweight. Nobody has popcorn, nobody has sodas. Everyone's just sitting watching a movie, and this shows you how our culture has changed so much, right? And so that's why those foods aren't super high, because 700 calories a pound, if you're balancing that with the fruits and the vegetables, the whole grains, that's actually a pretty good calorie density for your food. And so if you're in that 500 calories a pound for your whole food for your whole day, you're going to see on those breakouts that you're going to be a healthy weight. You're going to lose weight if you're eating higher in calorie density than that, and if you're trying to gain weight, then you're going to maybe want to increase your calorie density a little bit. So let's move over a little bit further. Tortillas, 1,000 calories a pound. Ice cream, also 1,000 calories a pound. Obviously, the difference between a tortilla and an ice cream is the ice cream has the saturated fat, the cholesterol, no fiber, whereas the tortilla gets the yellow light, which is, in moderation kind of a thing, right? Same with the bread. We talked about the dried fruit. Cheese, 1,700 calories a pound. Sugar, 1,700 calories a pound. Again, the sugar is just you're sprinkling it on something, whereas cheese, Charlie showed you how we eat 30 pounds of cheese a year. And so that's a food, right? And so it's got the saturated fat, the cholesterol, all the bad animal protein stuff we've talked about. And then cookies. So I want to do a little experiment here with cookies. So now, if you take a wheat berry and you grind it into a powder, what do you have? Flour, right? And so now if you just add some water, knead it up, with some salt, some yeast, and you bake it, what is it now? Bread, right? So now you went from 500 calories a pound to 1,200 calories a pound by doing processing, right? Now what happens if you take that same flour and you add some sugar, you add some butter or oil, and you bake it, what do you have? Cookie, right? Now cookies are 2,000 calories a pound. So you just increased it even more from 1,200 calories a pound to 2,000 calories a pound. Does anyone have a guess how many calories in a pound of Oreo cookies? So it's a cookie, but what do you think? Any guesses? It's actually 2,400 calories a pound. So cookies in general, 2,000, but I've looked it up. Oreo cookies are 2,400 calories in a pound of Oreos. But does anyone sat and ate a pound of Oreos? I haven't, but I used to eat 6 or 7 of them, whatever a sleeve is, right? With some milk, right? So there's that. And then chips are 2,300 calories a pound because that's again been ground up, fried in oil. So now you've added the oil, which is the worst, for 4,000 calories a pound, to that whole grain, that corn or whatever, to make a chip. Now look at nuts and seeds, 2,800 calories a pound. So you understand why we say, and Dr. Greger says, hey, just a handful of nuts a day, nuts and seeds, because they're really healthy. They're really good for you. That's why they're yellow light. But wow, 2,800 calories in a pound of nuts and seeds. And then butter and oil, we don't need to talk about. So yeah. You'd have to weigh it out. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never actually weighed a pound of, or a cup of nuts to see how much that weighs. You'd have to, it'd probably be more than that to get to a, but if you look at like the label of like I get my mixed nuts that I put on my oatmeal at Costco, and I've looked to see like how many, I think another one, the physician that's right next to me and at work, he loves peanuts, and his medical assistant gave him a whole case of peanuts just as a joke. And I actually looked at it was one of those, kind of standard plastic bottles like this of peanuts. And I looked at it, say, how many servings is this? And I remember, and it was a pound. It was actually a pound of, so that was a pound of nuts, one of those whole peanuts, one of those whole containers about this big. And so that's 2,800 cal. I told him, hey, this is 2,800 calories in this whole thing of nuts that you have here. And so yeah, so that's the calorie density of nuts. Um, so I want to give you another example of this and how to use this and how, let's kind of pull back and kind of give an example of how this is so important when you're thinking about, whatever diet you decide to eat, and how the calorie density can make a huge difference. So have any of you guys ever you remember watching the 600-pound life show where Dr. Nowzardan, the bariatric surgeon, and so people were over 600 pounds, and he'd put them on a 1,200 calorie a day diet. So they had to prove to him that they could lose weight eating it was actually a low carb diet he recommended, but 1,200 calories a day. And so he gave him a whole booklet, and you have to be able to show me that you can lose weight over the next, three months or so, and following this calorie restricted diet to see if you he can do the gastric sleeve surgery on them. So let's just take two different people. They're doing kind of low carb, which low carb is calorie density wise is pretty similar to this might be maybe slightly lower than the standard American diet, because when they've reviewed the standard American diet, kind of the meat sweet diet, it's somewhere around 1,500 calories in a pound of standard American diet food, what the average person tends to eat, about 1,500 calories a pound. Somebody doing kind of, if you were looking at low carb and they were eating, lots of poultry, eggs, fish, probably, still eating cheese because pretty high fat, so, some nuts and seeds, butter, oil. So they're getting all that. There might be slightly less because a little bit less processed foods. And so let's be generous and say they're probably eating maybe 1,200 calories a pound, maybe 1,000 calories a pound, but probably more likely closer to 1,200 calories per pound. And so one thing I didn't mention when we talked about the physiology of our appetite is when they did these nutrition studies, feeding studies, they call them, they'd actually lock people up in a 5-star resort for like a month at a time, sometimes pay people. So if you pay people enough and to lock them away so they can control everything. So you can't sneak food in, you know exactly how much people are eating because you weigh the food when they serve it up, and then you weigh what's left if what they don't eat. So you can be really meticulous about it. And so people volunteer for this. You stay in this really great 5-star hotel. They would manipulate how much physical activity each group of people would get to do. And again, I'll show you the results of that. And so they knew exactly what they're eating, what their calorie density was, what their activity levels were, and everything. And so 1,200 calories. So yeah, so what they did find out from these studies is that people tend to eat the same volume of food day to day. So everybody eats slightly different. So depending on your activity level, your muscle mass, male, female, body size, there's a lot of things that determine how much volume of food a person eats in a day. But each individual person eats about the same amount of food per day. And the average is 3 to 5 pounds of food per day is what most people eat. So if you think about, let's just go with make the math easy. Let's just say your average weight, average height, maybe a little bit smaller, a little bit less active. So maybe you eat a pound of food 3 meals a day. Let's just say that because that's on the low end between the 3 to 5 pounds. So just to make the math easy, let's say you eat a pound of food. And actually studies do show when you fill your stomach with about a pound of food, you feel pretty full. You feel pretty satisfied. That's a pretty good volume of food. You ate a pound of food, you feel full, you feel satisfied. And so let's just say person number one is eating the low carb 1,200 calorie per day diet. And so if they were eating 3 pounds of food, so let's go with the calories. So if you're following 1,200 calories a day and you're counting calories and you're eating 1,200 calories per pound, as we talked about, right? 1,200 calories per pound, how much food is that person eating in a day? 1 pound, right? So if you're eating 1,200 calories in a day, but you're eating a 1,200 calorie per pound diet, you're only going to get a pound of food a day. You think that person's going to feel very full or satisfied with only a pound of food for the whole day? No, not very well, right? And so now, what if you're eating like Charlie talks about? You saw those pictures in his meal preparation and planning class. Tons of non-starchy vegetables, some starchy vegetables, fruit for dessert, starchy vegetables like potatoes, sweet potatoes, some whole grains like oatmeal and all those things, beans and legumes. The highest calorie density food that he had on his plate was essentially the legumes, beans and legumes at 600 calories a pound. Lots of greens, lots of fruit, lots of potatoes, whole grains. His calorie density on his plate is probably close to 400 calories a pound. If you average all those together and balance them out, he's probably only eating about 400 calories a pound. So if somebody's eating 400 calories per pound and eating 1,200 calories, how much food are they getting? 3 pounds, right? So you think who's happier? Both are eating 1,200 calories, exact same number of calories. One person's eating 1 pound of food, another person's eating 3 pounds of food. So who's happier, do you think, with the satiety, with the filling the stomach and all that, right? It's a trick question. It's like if you're eating donuts and garbage like that, you might be happy in the short term, right? Because it's lighting up your dopamine and everything. But yeah, so that's a great example of how calorie density. See how calorie density is everything. It's like it's everything. And so and again, you don't even have to count calories. And people always ask us all the time, hey, how many calories should I be eating? It's like let your body tell you how many calories you need. Your hunger drive is always gonna protect your lean body mass. So your hunger drive is like if you're losing lean body mass, you're going to be just ravenously hungry, unless you're like you've had bariatric surgery, you're on a GLP-1, which is kind of tricking the system. So then you can trick that, or you can even take amphetamines, like pick up a cocaine habit, an amphetamine habit. Those stimulants will suppress your appetite. So that you can bypass that hunger drive, you can trick it. But yeah, if our hunger drive is not our enemy. It's actually protecting our lean body mass. So you can see this just as long as you give it the right foods. That's why green light is green light, yellow light is yellow light, and red light is red light. Because not only for health and nutrition aspects that we talk about in these classes all the time, but also the calorie density plays a role in that. And so before I start showing some videos of some examples, any other questions about what calorie density is, how important or how impactful this chart can be? Thoughts, questions before I show some videos? Yeah. 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 So the question is, what's wrong with eating a little bit of butter, tiny amount once in a while? Nothing. I mean, you could probably make the same case as the sugar. It's because it's not because if you're just doing or the oil, if you're just trying to do a little bit for flavoring or whatever, it's not very much. It just depends on what your health goals are. If you're still drowning your salad in oil, or you're cooking with oil, you're using butter, you're lots of sugar, and you're still not at your goal weight, then those are easy low hanging fruit that you can cut out because that makes a huge difference in your calorie density. Like I talked about earlier, just that 1 tablespoon of olive oil on your salad dressing, that has more calories in it than all of the vegetables that are in the whole giant bowl, right? And so you just have to make those individual choices. Yeah, right here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So much better. I agree with that. So the comment was the things don't taste as good or as the same as they did, decades and decades ago, and that's true because everything's mass produced and it's trying to basically improve shelf life and it travels so far. So if you buy from the farmers market, the little cherry tomatoes you get, I know this all the time that the cherry tomatoes I buy local from a farmers market taste 100% different than the ones that are in the little sealed plastic at Fred Meyer. Those are don't taste good at all compared to the other ones. Yeah. Yeah, strawberries that taste like real strawberries. Same with like carrots. You ever eat those little, baby carrots that they have in the packages where they bleach them and they strip all the skin off and they're just these little nubs. It's like that. It's like if you're dipping it in something, hummus or something, you maybe don't care so much. You don't notice as much. But when you actually buy a bundle of carrots from a garden and actually, oh, this is actually a carrot. This is what a carrot actually tastes like. It's like you kind of forget how good, like sometimes when I used to go to the salad bars, like it, back when they had Hometown Buffet. You remember that place? Hometown Buffet or even Izzy's, and they'd have like the salad bar. It's like how do these vegetables taste like nothing? It's like you can't even, like a sprig of broccoli doesn't taste any different than the cauliflower. It's like everything just blends together. It's like it has very little flavor, and it's like, yeah, it's crunchy and yeah, I can see it's cauliflower, but it's like, but then you kind of get used to that. But then when you actually eat real good, produce from a farmer's market or in your own garden or something, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like so much better, right? And so it's just, yeah, the food system has changed for convenience. So go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll see. I'll give Ed a second to, because sometimes, when we roll the videos, he has to make a few tweaks with the sound system, and I have to stop talking so he can turn my microphone off and get this rolling. So there's two separate videos here we're going to watch.
Foods equal calories. All you got to do is see which one is more filling. Okay. So we got 2 little soy chicken nuggets, and we got 1 1/4 cups of vegetable lentil soup. Don't say anything yet. There are people still thinking on this one, okay? We'll give them a few minutes. Everybody think they got an answer? Which one do you think? The soup. Now, if you went to medical school or dietetic school or you studied biochemistry and physiology, they would tell you all different things about what fills you up. You might hear about chemicals and hormones and enzymes like CCK and ghrelin, and leptin. You might hear fat is more filling and all these other things, right? Just forget about it. Just pretend you just walked in off the street, which I think many of you did. You just walked in off the street. You don't know anything about biochemistry, chemistry, food, or anything. Just take a wild guess. What do you think it is about the vegetable lentil soup that will fill you up more than the soy chicken nuggets? Anybody? Volume. Man, there's just more of it. And it turns out that's right. They actually did these studies where they fed people equal calories of food to see which was the most filling. And they did it short-term, long-term, subjective, and objectively. So pretty good studies. And they found out that all foods that fill you up have 3 things in common. And can anybody guess what number 1 was? Reading my prompts, huh? Number 1 was water. And that kind of makes sense, because what does water take up a lot of? Space. And filling up the space in the stomach actually contributes to satiety. Because as you'll learn more about this weekend, on the outside of the stomach, you have these little nerves called stretch receptors. And when you fill the stomach up, they stretch a little, they send signals to the brain, which help release all those chemicals telling you you're, right? Don't you all like to get that feeling of full? So water is very important. Water helps, gives you that, and water also has a lot of weight, which helps give that stretch. Because some things have lots of volume, but they don't have a lot of weight, right? Like air. So water was very important. Anybody want to guess what number 2 was? That's right. Fiber. Now, fiber doesn't make sense when you think about it like water does, because fiber doesn't take up a lot of space, it doesn't have a lot of volume. But do you know what you get when you mix a lot of water and a lot of fiber together? You know what you get? You get a lot of, did you say gas? That's true. You get a lot of gas in the beginning. But you get something called bulk, right? And it turned out that bulk was the biggest contributor to your feeling full. Now, nutrients did play a role. You do have these nutrient receptors, and nutrients were important, but it turns out they're not the most important. So when they tell you to eat a diet high in protein or high in fat because that'll fill you up the most, it's not true. I could take two foods with the exact same amount of protein in them, and guess which one will fill you up more? The one that has the most bulk. Right. Think about that. So it's not just the protein or the fat, and I'm going to show you here in a minute. Please give everybody a chance. Okay, you ready? Okay, we have a cup of cashews, and we have 6 small baked potatoes. Do not say anything yet. So, with salsa. That's correct. Somebody, yeah, with salsa. We'll leave it at that. Okay, which one do you think will fill you up more? The potatoes. Why? What do the potatoes have more of that the cashews do? Bulk. Now, are these high in fat? Yeah, they're 75% fat. Is this low in fat? It's 1% fat. So is fat filling? No, not at all. Now, does this make cashews fattening? No, not necessarily. What if you ate just 1 or 2 cashews? That's not right. You're right. We know nobody does that. Okay, now I'm going to do some other comparisons. You ready? So this one was pretty easy. Enough said over there, right? Okay, look at this one. Oh, we did this one already, but I want to make another point. Is this high in fat? 70–80%. Is this low in fat? Under 10. So is fat what filled you up? What filled you up? The bulk. Everybody got that? Here we go. 2 low-fat fig Newmans, not to mention anybody in particular, and 1 small cantaloupe. They're both 140 calories. You see the difference? Which would fill you up more? The cantaloupe. Now let me ask you a question. In 1980, you heard you should go on a low-fat diet, right? So you go to the supermarket or the whole food store, and you find all these low-fat foods, and you fill up on those. Do you see the problem? If you eat all you want, what happened to your caloric intake? It's too high. But what if you eat just the right amount of calories? Then what's happened? Now you're hungry all day long. Is that going to happen with these foods? Now, just for the record, do you know that the percentage of fat, carb, and protein is almost identical? They almost have the same ratio. So is it the ratio or the amount of protein, the carb, or the fat that fills you up? Because those two are pretty equal. What fills you up more? Bulk. It's simple. Look at this one. Here's the... On the left, we have a 2-pound fresh pineapple. On the right, we have 4 ounces of gummy bears. Both are 450 calories. Now, I put this one up there because everybody's anti-sugar these days, right? You can't have sugar. Sugar's no good. Can't have carbs. And I think that's crazy because, you know, sugar's good for you. I mean, does everybody know what the best fuel for your body is? Gummy bears. Make a note of that. I got to fix the slide, okay? Gummy bears. Right. What's the fuel that your body runs on, the preferred fuel? What do you... Glucose. That's a fancy name for sugar. Now, your body will also burn another fuel. Anybody know what it is? Fat. Whoever said it is correct. The 2 fuels your body likes to burn, number 1 is sugar, number 2 is fat. Now, every now and then you hear somebody say, I need some energy. I got to get some protein. Right? You ever hear that? Well, just realize when somebody tells you that, they just told you they know nothing about physiology and biochemistry, because that's not what your body wants to use for energy. And in fact, it's a difficult process. Your body uses carbs first, and secondary is fat. So, you know, when you work out, and some of you get an exercise, your muscles burn up some carb, and they also burn up some fat. And some of us are looking to burn up a little bit more fat, right? But there's parts of your body that can't burn fat. Parts of your body can only burn sugar. Glucose. And anybody know what part of your body it is? The brain. That's why I don't get it when people are so anti-sugar and they want to avoid sugar. I mean, I don't know about them, but my brain, very important to me. And it needs sugar every day. And they've actually done studies. I mean, there's recommended minimum intakes of sugar just to fuel the brain. Anybody know how much that is, the recommended minimum intake of sugar you need just to fuel the average brain? 500 calories a day just to fuel the average brain. Now, I had mine tested. Mine burns about 750 a day, but... Oh, I'm smart. You're very nice. Because the last time I was here, somebody raised their hand and said, why? Is yours less efficient? Why is that funny? I said, don't make fun of me. I have the props. Okay, so is sugar the problem or is the package the problem? I mean, these both have the same amount of calories and the same amount of sugar. Are they equal to you? No. What's 90% of the weight and volume of the pineapple you're going to eat there? Water, fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and a great package and great matrix, just right for you. What's 90% of the weight and the volume of this? Sugar. So is sugar the problem or the package it came in? It's the package. Don't be afraid of sugar. Once again, get it in its whole natural form. Now, what I think is the real irony is they take foods like this, they process and refine the heck out of them, so we're left with this white crystalline powder, which is sweet, but doesn't really have a flavor. It's just sweet. So then they make it into things like this, but to get kids to eat it, what do they flavor it as? This. Does anybody see that irony? Just give them the pineapple. So then we have people who have been loading up on these for 20 years. They got heavy. And then what do they say? I can't eat pineapple. It has sugar in it. So, okay, here's a few more I just want to show you so you can get the point. Every one of them will be 200 calories. That's a pat of butter, in case you forgot what it looked like. And those are grapes, 200 calories. Which would be better for you? Which would be more filling? Which would have more fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and everything? Okay, here we have a little bit of almonds. Here we have carrots. Same 200 calories. See the difference? So you see the problem if we put bowls of almonds out in the back? We would have this room packed. It's not that almonds are bad for you, but what would happen to all of you? We would overeat. And it's not your fault. So, here we go again. French fries and honeydew melon. See the difference? And which would be better for you? The one on the right. Right. That's olive oil and sliced apples. Same calories. Which would fill you up more? Which would be healthier? Right. There's broccoli and pretzels. Are you drooling over the broccoli now or the pretzels? This was the red meat guy, so I'm trying to figure it out. See the difference? Now, I'm not saying you should only eat raw broccoli. I'm just making a point. And is everybody getting the point? Okay, good, because now it gets harder. Hershey Kisses and those little red peppers we occasionally have out in the back. See why we put the peppers out? No. Okay. Potato chips and celery. Every now and then somebody says, you know, I'm really enjoying this diet, but I would like something crunchy. And I'm like, eat crisp celery. It's very crunchy. And they say, no, 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 no. I want something that's crunchy and kind of has like a salty flavor. So I said, eat crisp celery. It's crunchy and kind of has a salty flavor. And they say, no, that's not quite what I want. And I say, just admit it. You want potato chips. Okay.
Good. Okay. So that's helpful, right? To see those comparisons. So yeah, definitely recommend watching the full lecture. He even talks about, good carbs and bad carbs and a bit about protein, and there's a lot more stuff in that lecture. So definitely recommend watching that. So here's the what I was referring to earlier, multiple times, is the calorie density breakout. So this was the results of those control studies where people were locked away in the 5-star resort. So if you eat only foods that are 400 calories per pound or less, everyone lost weight even without any exercise, completely sedentary. So if you just start looking at that calorie density chart and say, okay, I'm going to average out to about 400 calories a pound, eating, like half my plate is starchy vegetables and grains and beans, and then the other half is non-starchy vegetables, your broccoli, your cauliflower, your leafy greens, kind of all the other vegetables that are not the starchy vegetables, and then fruit for dessert, for example, then you're going to be right about that 400 calories a pound. And so you could essentially eat as much as you want. And that was the other thing with these studies. Everyone, they're all eat as much as you want. So every one of those studies that they did, were, they call it in Latin, they call it ad libitum. So ad libitum experiment. So they encourage people eat, don't eat till you're overly stuffed. Don't eat, and then eat till you're comfortably full. So eat as much as you want. Don't overstuff yourself. Don't limit how much you eat. And so that was the same for everybody. So then they manipulated the calorie density of the food selections that people had. And that's what it showed was 400 calories a pound. Everyone lost weight, even completely sedentary people. Between 400 and 800 calories per pound, everyone lost weight as long as you exercise at least 30 to 60 minutes per day, which is kind of, essentially what we recommend in lifestyle medicine as well, getting that 150 minutes to 300 minutes per week of moderate intensity exercise, whether that's walking or swimming or gardening or just being active on your feet. We have a whole talk on physical activity, but so if you just people that averaged that 30 to 60 minutes per day, even going up to 400 to 800 calories a pound, they all lost weight. 800 to 1200 calories per pound, everybody gained weight except for the heavy exercisers, and those were people that exceeded the 1 hour of exercise a day. So if you look at like those Biggest Loser shows, they're exercising multiple hours a day just because they're trying to lose so much weight. So they're calorie restricting and they're exercising heavily. But in these particular studies, everyone gained weight when you were up in that 800 to 1200 calories a pound, except for the very heavy exercisers. And then going to 1200 calories per pound and up, everybody gains weight, even the heavy exercisers. So if you think about the standard American diet being close to 1500 calories per pound, even heavy exercisers gain weight. So like that was, if you guys were here for my introduction, and I told my story. So yeah, I was riding my bicycle 7,000 miles a year when I was 47 pounds heavier than I am now. So I was a heavy exerciser, 7,000 miles a year on my bicycle, eating more or less the standard American diet, and I was overweight. And so if I knew then what I know now, so now with a couple thousand miles a year on my bike, and now I eat plant-based diet, my calorie density went way down. I lost that 47 pounds and eat as much as I want. So, but yeah, so it's that I'm a perfect example of that. So I was definitely eating over 1,200 calories per pound, eating the standard American diet back then, and I was a heavy exerciser, and the studies show still gain weight. And so, yeah, next slide. And then, yeah, recommend watching the full Jeff Novick lecture every 3 months until you have reached your goal weight. And if you ever start to gain again, watch it again. And it's in the class website under the videos section. And I think that's the last slide. Yep. And then so you can pull that down. But yeah, time for questions. Any questions people have about calorie density, weight management, all that. And again, we'll get into the kind of the behavioral side of things with food addiction, behavior change at class number 12. We'll dive into those slides, but just want to make sure you guys understand the concept of calorie density. And that, again, is with the 21 tweaks, that's just one aspect of it. There's so many other things. If you look at the 21 tweaks, the different spices and other foods, there's other strategies to help lose weight, and they all can contribute. But I think just having that basic concept of calorie density is super important, because then when you look at categories of foods and you're planning your meals, like, oh, I can eat as much of that as I want. And some of the other strategies you'll see is and it's in Dr. Greger's book too, the How Not to Diet book, is like, okay, we start off with, instead of having bread, like you think when you go out to dinner, you have the breadsticks there. That's like one of the highest calorie density things that you get served, right? And you're eating those, and then you have your main course, and then you kind of fill up on that. And then you want to start off with like a salad or something like that, even if it has, you want to make sure it's an oil-free dressing, so you're not really boosting your calorie density. So if you're eating, drinking water, you're eating a salad with a no oil dressing, and then by the time you get to the main course, which might be a little bit higher in calorie density, you try to eat a small portion of that. And then if you're still hungry, you could go back and have another salad. So that's one of the strategies, is like instead of going back for seconds because you're still hungry of the foods in your meal that are a little higher in calorie density, you have seconds on the foods that are lower in calorie density. So there's like tricks to that. Like you can drink a glass of water, eat a bunch of carrots or some vegetables or cut up fruit, and then you eat that before your actual meal. And then when you eat your meal that maybe it has pasta and some, well, of course, let me play devil's advocate. Let's say you're still eating some meat and dairy, and because you're not ready to give that up yet. So you just preloaded, it's called preloaded, with water, with foods that are all 100 calories a pound or less. And then you go eat the food that's, a little bit richer. It's got, say, a cheese sauce or a pasta or meat, because again, you aren't plant-based yet. And then studies show you won't eat as much of that because you're already filled up on some of the other lower calorie density stuff. And then if you still feel hungry after that, go back and do the lower calorie density foods again. And those are some of the tricks you can do using calorie density in your favor to help you lose weight. But there's a lot more to that. Reading, going through the 21 tweaks, the calorie density lecture with Jeff Novick. Yes, Ed. Oh, okay, great. So questions?
Calorie density thing was pretty interesting in that the pasta was seemed like on the good side of, but what the pasta's made out of, we look at trying to get like whole grain.
Right.
But I certainly don't like it as much as the regular salmon.
It's the white flour pasta or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, even within pasta, there's healthier choices, less healthy choices. Obviously, like a white flour pasta is the worst choice out of all the pastas. And then there's the red lentil pasta, the quinoa pasta, and the whole wheat pasta. And a lot of times people don't like those as much until you get used to them. I know now, after I got used to like the whole wheat pasta, like sometimes you go to some restaurant and it's just all they had was the white flour pasta. It's just kind of mushy and just kind of dissolves in your mouth. And now I don't prefer it. There was a day I preferred that, but my taste had changed over time. I've been doing this for almost 14 years now. And so I don't like that anymore. Or white, like when I had my colonoscopy a couple weeks ago, I had to eat this low residue diet. So I was eating like Honey Nut Cheerios and crisp, Special K. I was eating all this garbage cereal and stuff because I couldn't eat anything with fiber in it because I had to clean it to help clean out. And so it was awful. It's like, and I was eating like English muffins, and I couldn't even eat whole grain toast. I'd eat like, so I was eating to me, it was just like garbage food. It was still no animal products, but it was just processed and no fiber and all that. And so, that's a good example. I used to prefer those foods, but now I don't.
But calorie wise or density wise, they're all the same.
They might be slightly different. If you were to look at, I guess you'd have to, look at the label and figure out, because it's hard with dried pasta. It might just have calories per serving, but I think it's supposed to be cooked. So, I would say anything that has more fiber in it's going to lower the calorie density. So you remember from Jeff Novick that you add water to it, you add fiber to it, it's going to lower the calorie density. So actually, a whole grain pasta would have slightly lower calorie density than white flour pasta because of the fiber. And so, so there is a difference in there. But still, it's amazing that, so the other thing too, if you're trying to lose weight and lower your calorie density, you would have, so instead of having pasta with a tomato sauce on it with vegetables, you would have vegetables with some pasta on it, right? So you can flip it. So the thing you're eating the most of, instead of the biggest portion of what you're eating on a pasta dish is, instead of it being pasta is the highest volume of food you eat on that plate. You want the vegetables to be the highest volume of food on the plate with the addition of the pasta. Like you saw on Charlie's plate, a lot of times he would have vegetables with grains added to it, or the starch added to it, kind of a thing. So then you're lowering your calorie density more if you're having higher volume of a lower calorie density. But you can overdo that too. So if you're still really hungry, and you can have a second helping, of course, but if then you're tired of chewing and you're just like, maybe don't have as much time to sit and eat 2 giant plates of food, you can still go a little higher on the starchy side of things. Like Dr. McDougall's philosophy was always a starch-based diet with the addition of fruits and vegetables. Rather than, so because like they have a maximum weight loss plan with McDougall. So like if you're starch-based, so your majority of your calories come from potatoes, sweet potatoes, beans, and tactile grains. That's the majority of your food with the addition of the non-starchy vegetables and fruit. And that was kind of because the starch base is that's going to give you, probably put you in more in that sweet spot, maybe 500 calories a pound or so. And so you're going to feel more full doing that. But if you're like, oh, I really need that, I'm not losing weight, and it's really not losing very much weight doing that. So then you might, instead of like 2/3 starchy vegetables, with the other third being non-starchy vegetables and fruit, you could flip it and do 2/3 is the non-starchy vegetables and fruit, and the third is the starchy vegetables. So you can actually flip that, and then that would lower the calorie density more, right? Because now you're eating more of the 100 calories a pound and below versus the 400 to 600 calories a pound that the starchy vegetables are. And so those strategies you can do to kind of, you're not getting the weight loss that you want or whatever, or if you're trying to gain weight. So some people that are trying to gain weight, they might need to do heavier on starchy vegetables, get more of the avocados, the nuts and seeds, the pasta. Those are things that are a little bit higher in calorie density. You're actually trying to put on weight, for example. Yeah, you're welcome. Any questions? Next week we have Dr. Colgrove coming, pediatrician. So if any of you have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, it's really good information. I really love his talks because it always reminds me of all the things maybe I did wrong with my kids when they were growing up. Oh, you're not getting dessert till you finish your broccoli, or you got to sit there till you finish and clean your plate, and all these things. And I learned so much with what the Summit really shows about really healthy eating behavior. And now we're applying that to my granddaughter, because my son and daughter-in-law are plant-based, and they're raising her plant-based, and but all the ins and outs of having her have a healthy relationship with food. So I think it'd be great for all of you to come, and even though he is geared towards pediatrics, kids, families, but it's also good for families because it's ways to. I learned a lot where I have my patients that I'm trying to eat more plant-based at work. I have, from what I've learned from Eric and some of the talks, is that, and some of the books I wrote too on pediatric nutrition and food eating behavior and stuff, is that tips I can give to families about how to make it work with when you have kids that are picky eaters and all these different things. And so I think it's super important information you guys can share with your friends or family, people that have kids. So definitely hope you guys come next week for that. Cool roast moment, and then then the week after that, 2 weeks from tonight, is a cooking demonstration from Chef Corey and Miranda from Acorn. Have you guys all been to Acorn Community Cafe? So it's great. So you'll definitely check that out and come, and we'll have some dinner. You'll food samples. He always has plenty, so you'll get plenty to eat for that one in 2 weeks as well. So good time. Any other last questions, comments, anything from anyone? Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.